Hey guys, it's been a long time coming. Today I will share with everyone my entire collection of bushcrafting knives, hatchets, axes, and saws. So stay tuned.
So I'll be going over how I acquired each tool, how much the tool costs, and the tool's performance characteristics. Let's start with the saw. I bought this Bahco Laplander folding saw on Amazon about 5 years ago for $20. The Laplander is compact, lightweight, and very efficient at sawing wood that is under 4 inches in diameter. The diamond carbide teeth on this saw is very durable. After 5 years of regular use, I have not noticed any major declines in sawing efficiency. Next, we'll move on to the knives. So I found this little neck knife in a corner of the basement of our house when we first moved in 4 years ago. To this day, I still don't know when this knife was made, but on the internet I found a picture of a mid-20th century Finnish knife that looks remarkably like this one. The blade was badly rusted over, so I had to restore it. I also made a little sheath for this knife out of some scrap leather and some duct tape. This knife has a rat tail tang. The blade is some kind of high carbon steel, and it has a sharp convex edge. It also holds this edge remarkably well. This knife requires sharpening on the stone just once a year and regular stropping to maintain its sharpness. I use this blade a lot for wood carving, for cutting cordage, and for food processing. Now, I've never batoned with it because I think it's a bit too fragile for that. 9 years ago, I bought this Bahco Stainless steel knife in a bait and tackle shop in Pennsylvania, and I spent just $7 for it. I put a 90-degree edge on the spine of this blade to make it throw sparks with a fire steel. The blade is shaving sharp and pretty agile. The knife's handle is easy to grip and has no hot spots whatsoever. The rubberized grip is a great safety device when the handle is wet. I use this knife for fine carving tasks, for cleaning fish, and for general food processing. Now, this knife's tang only goes about a quarter of the way into the handle, so batoning with it is a bit risky. With that said, I have done straight grain batoning with this knife several times and had no issues. The main advantage of this knife is that its stainless steel blade is highly resistant to rusting. My only gripe with this knife is that the edge dulls faster and tends to roll a little bit more when it hits a hard knot in the wood. So I tend to need to sharpen this knife more often than my high carbon steel blades. 4 years ago, I got the Mora Classic No. 1 knife from Amazon, and I spent $10 on it. This knife has a high carbon steel blade and a thin rat tail tang. The Mora Classic really excels at fine carving tasks. The knife is very agile and capable of making acute, high precision cuts. It is also scary sharp, guys. Now, I haven't used this blade very much at all, and this is because just a few months after buying this knife, I had an accident. It was a rainy day, and the raindrops made the Mora Classic's handle quite slippery. So when making a cut, my fingers accidentally slid off the handle and onto the blade, and then it was badly cut. So now I'm kind of leery of using this tool, and in fact, I haven't really used this knife with me on any outdoor trips in over 3 years. 5 years ago, I got this Mora Companion heavy-duty knife for $14 on Amazon. This knife is by far the most heavily used knife in my entire arsenal. It has been my faithful companion on the vast majority of my outdoor adventures. The handle on the Mora is super ergonomic and high traction. It has no hot spots as far as I can tell. The blade strikes a good balance between being thick enough to split wood while still being nimble enough to make acute high precision cuts. I use this blade for pretty much all cutting tasks, from carving to making feather sticks to food processing and to batoning. Speaking of batoning, I have batoned with this knife literally hundreds of times with both straight grain as well as cross grain batoning. This is a crazy level of durability for a 3/4 tang knife. The knife's high carbon steel edge is scary sharp and extremely durable. To maintain this razor edge, I would strop this knife regularly and sharpen on the stone only about twice a year. My only small complaint with this knife is that the high carbon steel blade rusts too easily when I'm out and about in coastal and riverine environments. But other than that, it's a great knife. The last knife in my collection is not really my knife at all. I got the Mora Companion stainless steel knife for my son last year for $16 on Amazon. Now, I've been using this Mora to teach my boy the essential knife skills that he needs to know. The Mora Companion is just as scary sharp as the heavy duty. It is a bit more agile than the heavy duty, which makes it better for fine carving tasks. The thinner blade also makes it marginally less efficient at battoning, but I haven't seen any problems on that front. The only other drawback that I've noticed so far is the increased need to sharpen this blade. It seems like stainless steel edges are not quite as durable as carbon steel ones. Over the last year, we had to sharpen this blade on the stone 3 times to maintain its razor edge. Now, onto the heavy cutting tools. About 20 years ago, I was at this antique shop in Maine and saw this rusty old hatchet. It was on sale for $3 and I bought it. The seller told me then that the hatchet head was over 100 years old and that it was made locally in Maine. Fast forward to 5 years ago, when I was just getting into bushcrafting, I decided to restore the hatchet head, reprofile it, I hafted it to a handle, and made a sheath for it out of scrap leather and Chicago screws. So in total, I spent around $15 for the entire thing. This was my very first bushcraft hatchet, and I learned a lot with this tool. I learned how to sharpen a hatchet to a razor edge. I learned how to use the hatchet effectively and how to modify the head and handle to optimize the tool's performance. Overall, it's a great little hatchet, but there are a few things about this tool that I don't like. One is the hafting job. I absolutely botched it. The head came loose after only 1 year of use. Since then, I've made several attempts to tighten the head. This included pounding in multiple metal wedges and soaking the head in boiled linseed oil multiple times. Now, none of these hacks worked for longer than a year. The other thing I don't like is that the steel quality of the bit is inferior. Early on, I had reprofiled the edge to enable the hatchet to make acute, high-precision cuts. And while the hatchet can now make such cuts, the modified edge became much more susceptible to rolling when I used the hatchet for heavy splitting or chopping tasks. So now I'm thinking of rehafting the head onto a much shorter handle and turning into more of a hand hatchet instead. So after using my first hatchet for a while, I became somewhat obsessed with the concept of the hatchet as a survival cutting tool. And I really wanted one of those fancy old world Swedish hatchets. So 3 years ago, I coughed up $83 and bought myself a Holtz hatchet. And so far, this hatchet has been worth every penny. The handle is thin and well balanced. The hafting job is rock solid. The sheath is high quality and durable. But the best part of this tool, in my opinion, is the steel quality. The edge of this hatchet must be made of some kind of miracle steel. It is hair-popping sharp. This hatchet can make extremely high precision cuts, as fine as that from a Mora knife. But then it can also be used for heavy chopping and splitting tasks. And this edge can do all of these things and still hold its razor sharp edge. I've been using this hatchet regularly now for 3 years and only had to sharpen it on a stone once. I even contacted Holtz to ask about how they made this steel, but their response was that it was a proprietary secret. So without belaboring the point, there is something a little bit magical about this hatchet. So 2 years ago, I found a rusty Vaughan axe head in my late father-in-law's garage. After asking around, I found out that it was his father who bought the axe back in 1958. So I restored and reprofiled the head and hafted it onto a $10 hickory handle. I also made a leather sheath for this axe out of scrap leather. Now, this small forest axe has become a prized tool in my collection. For such a large blade, it is scary sharp. It chops and splits like a beast, and is capable of doing fine woodworking. The steel quality of the edge is superb. I would say that the edge retention is nearly as good as the Holtz hatchet. I regularly use this axe for heavy wood processing out in the bush and also in my backyard. To maintain the razor sharp edge, I have had to sharpen it on the stone only once in the last 2 years. The only drawback, in my opinion, to this small forest axe is that it's a bit heavy. Now, the cutting tools that I choose to take with me on any given trip is highly dependent on the environment. I live in a temperate, coastal, woodland area. So for most day trips, I would take just the carbon steel Mora Companion heavy duty and the Bahco Laplander. This combination is lightweight and sufficient for most cutting tasks that one can encounter on short trips. However, for longer multi-day trips, I found it helpful to add a hatchet to this toolkit. The added wood processing capabilities of the hatchet really helps in terms of processing firewood, building shelters, and crafting other wooden tools. Now, for winter season trips or expeditions to northern regions, I find the optimal combination to be an axe and a small knife for fine woodworking. The small forest axe can be used with both hands, thus dramatically increasing the efficiency of wood processing. The trade-off here is added weight. Sometimes my adventures takes me to riverine, marshland, and coastal environments. On such trips, I would generally swap out the carbon steel knife with a stainless steel knife. In damp, high moisture environments, the stainless blades are much more maintainable than high carbon steel blades. Now, one idea that I've been playing around with is the one tool option. If you have a high quality steel hatchet like the Holtz, it can pretty much do everything you need, from firewood splitting to shelter building to fine carving to food processing. The only major disadvantage of this option is that it requires you to be highly skilled with the hatchet, and not everyone would have the time or patience to pick up all of these cutting skills. Anyways, these are the cutting tools that I use for my bushcrafting and survival training purposes. Each and every one of these blades is special to me in their own unique way. I hope you enjoyed my little show and tell. If you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell icon. See you laters. Bye.